Let's go back in time, shall we, to Victorian London. This was the beating heart of the biggest empire the world had ever seen. A city that was supposed to be paved with gold, but was also a city of deep, dark shadows. What we're going to do here is explore that contradiction, this incredible place of progress that was living right alongside some pretty profound misery.
And this quote, wow, it just nails it. You can almost feel it. Behind all those grand boulevards, the beautiful marble facades literally gave way to mud. And the air, it was so thick with coal smoke it tasted like sulfur. It was like two completely different worlds living side by side, each just trying to pretend the other one didn't exist.
So how do we even begin to see a world that's long gone? Well, we follow the artists, the ones who actually walked these streets with a sketchbook in their hand. Guys like Thomas Hosmer Shepard and Gustave Doré. They documented everything. I mean everything. From the most shimmering palaces to the absolute darkest slums. They saw both sides of the coin, and through their eyes, so are we.
Okay, first up, let's talk about London's relentless, almost violent transformation. By the 1820s, the city was basically eating itself alive, just demolishing its own history in this constant, hungry cycle of creative destruction.
And this right here really shows you that core tension perfectly. For every massive, grand structure they put up, like the General Post Office or the incredible Crystal Palace, an older piece of the city just vanished. The ancient Temple Bar, the Egyptian Hall, they were all casualties of London's insatiable appetite for the new.
But what's really wild is the speed of it all. I mean, look at this. The artist Thomas Hosmer Shepard was in a race against time. A bridge he painted was literally vaporized in a gunpowder explosion. And the General Post Office, this huge symbol of the empire's power, they tore it down less than 100 years after they built it. It just goes to show you, in Victorian London, nothing, and I mean nothing, was built to last.
Now, this constant churn didn't just tear down buildings, it shaped how people lived. And a perfect example of this is Christmas. The Victorians basically invented the holiday as we know it today, right? This time of carefully manufactured joy. But that warm, festive glow, it definitely didn't reach every corner of the city.
Just think about it for a second. The decorated tree? That became a thing because the royal family did it. Christmas cards? Yeah, they were invented by a guy who was just too busy to write letters. The big American turkey took the place of the humble goose. Old carols got a new lease on life. All of these traditions that feel so timeless to us, they were born right here, carefully crafting that cozy, familiar Christmas feeling.
But here's the thing, this warm, picture-perfect image of Christmas, that was not the reality for most people in London. You just had to turn one corner off the main street, and that celebration completely vanished. The snow on the ground turns black with soot, and you can't help but ask, for the forgotten millions, where was the party?
And here's where it gets really stark. For a working-class family, celebrating meant joining something called a goose club, where you'd save up your pennies all year long just for one big meal. But for the truly poor, survival was priced a little differently. In a homeless shelter, what they called a casual ward, one single penny bought you the right to sit on a hard bench for the night. 2 pennies? That let you sleep leaning against a rope.
The reality for so many was just brutal. There were children they called mudlarks who would wade through the toxic sludge of the River Thames at low tide, just hoping to find anything they could sell, a piece of coal, a rusty nail. And for others, the only escape from the endless cold and damp was what they called the temporary death of an opium den, where a few coins could buy you a few hours of oblivion.
And that brings us to another huge contradiction, the city's obsession with imposing this rigid, mechanical order on an existence that was defined by complete and utter chaos.
This, right here, is the ultimate symbol of control. Inside Newgate Prison, they had this thing called the mill. Prisoners walked in a silent, endless, dizzying circle, heads down, never allowed to even look at each other, let alone the sky. It was a human machine, designed to do one thing, grind your individual spirit into dust. But then you step outside the prison walls, and you find the total opposite. This is Ludgate Hill. The artist Gustave Doré called it a paralyzed artery. And you can see why. With no traffic lights, just the raw will of the drivers and the muscle of the horses, the entire city could just stop. A funeral hearse could be stuck right next to a beer wagon for hours, the dead and the drunk trapped together in the same muck.
But not all the chaos was paralyzing. In places like Whitechapel's Jewish Quarter, the chaos was alive, it was industrious, it was buzzing. Every single inch of pavement was a shop. If you had a basket, you were a business owner. This was the real engine room of the East End,
a hive of survival, just humming with ambition and the desperate need to make a living. So, what does this all mean for us? Why does this vanished city still matter? Well, because the brutal, innovative, and deeply contradictory DNA of Victorian London, it's embedded in every single modern city we live in today.
At the end of the day, this is the legacy. Victorian London was a brutal machine. It celebrated progress, it celebrated empire, but that progress was fueled by the lives of millions of forgotten people. Beneath all the grand architecture was a foundation of human stories. Sure, some were triumphant, but many, many more were tragic. It was a city built on human bones.
And that leaves us with one final thought. We've seen how London erased its own history, how it paved over buildings and overlooked the stories of its poorest people. So it kind of forces us to ask ourselves, in our own cities, with our own relentless drive for progress, which buildings, which communities, and whose stories are we erasing right now?